Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1187. 1187, Saturday, July the 11th, 2020. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, we have some very important news today regarding both the Michael Flynn case, the Spygate issue, and a couple of other things. So let's go ahead and get to that now. Okay, so the D.C. Circuit Court has requested a response by the Department of Justice and Sidney Powell within 10 days to the petition filed by Judge Sullivan for an en banc review of the mandamus order. No counter petition by Judge Sullivan will be allowed. Okay, so when we're talking about this en banc review, in case you don't know what that is, as you know, it was a 2-to-1 decision by the district court that Judge Sullivan dropped the case or dismissed the case. What Sullivan is requesting is the full district court judge, all the district court judges, hear his case or presentation about the case in opposition to dismissal and review it and make a ruling on it. So that is what Judge Sullivan did. So now the district court, in response to that, is asking the DOJ and Sidney Powell to respond to Sullivan's request for all the D.C. Circuit Court judges to hear his petition and rule on it. So, in other words, what they're saying is that the Department of Justice and Sidney Powell have 10 days to respond to Judge Sullivan's petition for the entire group of judges on the D.C. Circuit Court to respond to his request, opposing the order to dismiss the Flynn case. And of course, as it says here, the D.C. Circuit Court will not allow a counter petition by Judge Sullivan once the DOJ and Sidney Powell submit their petition to Sullivan's petition. So, as we can see, it's a poop show. It's a big poop show going on here, and it's pretty clear here that the D.C. Circuit Court is trying to rein this in as best they can. They're not just going to let it slide, and they appear to be following procedure. I didn't know exactly how they would respond, as I said a couple days ago. But now we know how they're going to respond. And the fact that they're only allowing 10 days tells you that the D.C. Circuit Court is getting mighty, let's just say their patience is being tested by Judge Sullivan. And we know that because they're only allowing 10 days. And they're not, because they want a response from Sidney Powell and the DOJ within 10 days to Sullivan's request. And they're not allowing any counter petition. In other words, they want to slam the door on it. They want the DOJ and Sidney Powell both to make an argument against Judge Sullivan's request for the entire D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals judges to hear and rule on his request. And his request is, of course, not to have to comply with dismissing the case and to allow his friend, the former judge, to come in and make a case against Flynn and the whole 9 yards. So clearly the D.C. Circuit Court is following procedure, but they're not showing a lot of leeway here. They're trying to bring this to conclusion, but they're trying to do it using a legal remedy as opposed to just coming out and lambasting Judge Sullivan and just telling him he's crazy and no, this is not going to fly. They are following procedure, legal procedure, but they're making it pretty clear that they're losing their patience here. So we'll wait for the next 10 days or so. I don't think it will take that long. I wouldn't be surprised if the DOJ and Sidney Powell already have the response and we're probably going to submit one anyway. But I don't think we'll have to wait 10 days. I think we'll probably have this response probably by Monday or Tuesday. And then we'll see. Obviously, they're not going to allow Judge Sullivan to counter that. So it's very likely that they could receive the petition from Sidney Powell and the DOJ and the D.C. Circuit Court and say, okay, that's good enough for us no, we're not going to grant your request, Judge Sullivan, to have the whole panel of D.C. Circuit Court of Appeal judges hear your case or whatever. We're not going to do that. This thing needs to end. And I think that that's probably what we're going to find, and I think this thing is about to come to a resolution. Clearly, they're doing everything they can. Now, I assume that from what I read earlier, that it's possible that Sullivan could take this all the way to the Supreme Court. But I find this extraordinary that he would do that. I mean, I think anybody, even, you don't even have to be a legal scholar to figure out pretty quickly that the Supreme Court would likely maybe not even hear this case. And they're done. The Supreme Court just finished their session. They're done. So they won't be convening for quite some time. And when they convene, if this shows up on their doorstep, I think that they'll laugh it off. I mean, I doubt that they would give this even 5 minutes of debate. I mean, I think this will be a 9-0 decision that Judge Sullivan has to follow the edict of the D.C. Circuit Court. Dismiss the case. I mean, this won't last 5 minutes at the Supreme Court. But the fact that it will take months for it to be heard buys them enough time to keep Michael Flynn quiet. And that's what this is all about. And everyone knows what this is about. The D.C. Circuit Court knows that this is an effort to stall, to keep Michael Flynn from being fully exonerated, from having his case completely dismissed, where he can then legally feel comfortable to go out and talk about anything he wants. Clearly, there's something that Michael Flynn knows that has got the deep state, the former Obama administration, terrified. There's something that Michael Flynn knows that he could disclose that has them terrified, or they would never be going through all this. And how they've been able to persuade Judge Sullivan to play this crazy game. Either Sullivan's nuts, and I don't think he is, or he's committing career suicide, and I don't think he would do that without a reason, or somebody has got something on Sullivan. And I've heard rumors of various things he's been involved in. I don't know about any of that. I'm not even going to take the time to dig into it. But obviously there's something going on. All right? I mean, it's fairly obvious. Something's going on. They want to shut Flynn up. He obviously has something to say that they definitely do not want coming out before the election. And clearly Sullivan is being pressed into doing this. And there has to be some reason why. It's not because he really believes in the cause. He's damaging his reputation beyond repair. There's a lot of things going on here, but I think it's going to come to a pretty swift conclusion. I'd be very surprised if Sullivan tries to take it to the Supreme Court. That might actually get a real serious response back from the D.C. court. And I don't know if the Supreme Court would even intervene at this point, whether they would send a letter and say, don't send this to us. We're going to be convening, next time we convene in the months ahead, we don't want to see this. You're barking up the wrong tree. I can tell right now, it's going nowhere. And they know that. I mean, they know it will go nowhere at the Supreme Court. But that's not the point. The point is to delay it. Also, again, on the Michael Flynn situation, of course, a couple of days ago, U.S. Attorney Jeff Jensen provided more documents to Judge Sullivan. Further evidence that exonerates Michael Flynn and shows more evidence of Obama and his administration's complicity in the attempted frame-up of Michael Flynn. Because the DOJ has unsealed the January 30th, 2017 memo that was recently given to Judge Sullivan in the Michael Flynn case. And the memo reveals that the Obama Coup cabal, the whole group of them, including Obama, knew Flynn was not lying and that he wasn't an agent of Russia. Also, Flynn knew that they had the Kislyak phone call when they interviewed him. That he knew it. Which, of course, everyone suspected he did. But now we know that he knew that they had the transcript of his phone call with Ambassador Kislyak. meaning he wouldn't have lied. He wouldn't have lied, knowing good and well they've got the transcript. That also means that Uncle Bob the Executioner Mueller and his team of crooked lawyers, the Hillary donor posse, also knew that Flynn was telling the truth. And they knew he was not an agent of Russia. Yet, they framed him anyway. Then, they leaked the information to the media to destroy Flynn. The FBI and the DOJ has had this evidence for 3 years, over 3 years, and they've been hiding it the whole time from the defense and all of us. Well, I'll tell you, Mr. Durham, if you weren't going after Uncle Bob the Executioner and his corrupt Hillary donor posse before, you have no choice but to do so now. Because you now have the evidence, and obviously Durham's had this information long ago. Certainly one of the areas of investigation now certainly has to be the Mueller witch hunt. It was a fraud. They knew, we now know that they knew, the Mueller team knew that Flynn was clean. They knew that Trump was clean. They knew the dossier was bullshit. They knew that Christopher Steele was bullshit. Yet they put us through the entire Mueller witch hunt. Cost the Democrats control of cost the Republicans control of the Congress. Gave the control of Congress to the Democrats so that they could pursue impeachment. This is major. This is major, and this absolutely must come out before the election. Durham and Barr have an obligation to make sure that the public knows what happened here. This is not a series of mistakes and mishaps. This was a coordinated effort to destroy Michael Flynn and the president and his administration, and essentially carry out a coup. And more evidence comes out every day. And Durham's got a lot more than we've got. And he's had this for a long time. My oh my. So now it's been about a week since the case in London with Alpha Bank versus Christopher Steele. Of course, we know how that turned out. Christopher Steele lost and Alpha Bank won. And the original damages that was reported that Steele had to pay was $22,000, but there's other damages involved, which now appear to total about $45,000. So it looks like it's not 22, it's going to be about $45,000 US dollars that Steele is going to be paying the owners of Alpha Bank. So now that I've had a chance to review some of what came out in this case, I'm going to go ahead and cover that with you now. And then I'm going to circle back around to where I've been for over 2 years now, when I've been telling everybody who would listen, that the rotten Reverend Clinton was the mastermind of this plot. And the information that has come out in this court case in London presents even more evidence that my initial gut reaction of over 2 years ago, that this was a rotten Reverend Clinton scheme, planned, organized, directed, and controlled by the rotten Reverend, appears to be exactly true. Let's go through what we learned as a result of this court case. The London court case is confirmed from Steele's own notes that Christopher Steele had told his FBI handlers in a July the 5th, 2016 meeting that the dossier's ultimate client was the Clinton presidential campaign. Boom. This means that the FBI knew immediately that the dossier they used to get the FISA on Carter Page was political opposition research designed to help Clinton defeat Trump, and they did not divulge that info to the FISA court, which is really bad news for Comey, Jimmy the Weasel, Mr. Potato Head John Brennan, and that unwitting idiot Clapper. Because Brennan and Clapper, well, Brennan said he didn't learn about who paid for the dossier until after the first of the year. Late, he said maybe, he couldn't be exact, maybe late December, maybe the 1st of January, somewhere around there. Turns out that can't possibly be true, because Steele told the FBI in July of 2016 exactly who he was working for. Absolutely, Brennan would have known that. He was incommunicado with Peter's been stroking us through this entire process throughout the summer. So clearly, Mr. Potato Head has now been caught in a lie. Clapper said the same. He couldn't remember exactly when, but he said it was after the election when he found out. He's obviously lying. And Jimmy the Weasel, it's even worse. Jimmy the Weasel, long after he'd been fired, long after 2017, he's doing an interview with Bret Baier on Fox News. This is what, back in the spring? Not that long ago, maybe what, 6, 7, 8 months ago? He's telling Bret Baier that he's still not sure if it was the Clinton campaign. He's got a lot of problems. Most of them criminal and legal. They all lied, and they're caught. And these court case documents prove it. Now, the London case also reveals that the State Department, where the Rotten Reverend had served as Secretary of State, was uniquely involved in Steele's efforts to bring the dossier into play. Just as I told you, she used the State Department to funnel the information into the FBI and the intelligence community. And you'll be a fool if you think that wasn't coordinated. The new evidence shows that Hillary's former Russia expert, Victoria F. the EU Nuland, along with Clinton's successor, John F. Kerry, who, by the way, served in Vietnam, along with Joe Biden's national security advisor, Tony Blinken, were all deeply involved in pushing Steele's phony dossier. Hillary's henchmen and women. Steele admitted in court that he gave copies of the dossier to Clinton's close friend Strobe Talbot in hopes that it would go to the top of the U.S. State Department. Talbot himself testified that he was due to meet with a group of individuals at the State Department and ask Steele to provide him copies of the dossier. Who do you think asked the Clintons' very close longtime friend, Strobe Talbot, to contact Steele and ask him, "Can I have a copy of your dossier?" Who do you think? Now we know who the people was who Talbot was meeting with. F. the EU Nuland, Tony Blinken, and John Kerry. They already told us that. And who's Talbot's brother-in-law? Cody Shearer, who also had the Shearer dossier. And I'm pretty sure Talbot would have got a hold of that as well. And what was Shearer doing? He was wandering the halls of the State Department, passing out his dossier, which is strikingly similar to the Steele dossier, which was also bullshit. How could two guys who apparently don't know each other come up with the exact same garbage? Now, if it were true, you could see how two guys could come up with the same true information. But what's the likelihood, the possibility, what are the numbers that two individuals who do not know each other, who are not coordinating with one another, would somehow come up with the exact same false information? What do you think the odds of that are? A gazillion to one? Probably. Something like that. What's that tell us? It tells us they were obviously being coached by the same people. Whoever was handling Steele was also handling or working with, in coordination with, Shearer. And Shearer gives his Shearer dossier to Blumenthal, Hillary's henchman, who then passes it on to Jonathan Weiner, another Hillary acolyte, who then gives it to Steele, who then passes it on to the FBI. Where did it originate? The Rotten Reverend. Everything originates with the Rotten Reverend. Steele also admitted to openly leaking to the news media while working and being paid by the FBI. Steele told the FBI that his dossier was not verified, but the FBI told the FISA court it was. That's a problem. And of course we know that it was in the third debate between Trump and the Rotten Reverend Clinton when the Rotten Reverend herself first accused Trump of being a puppet of Putin. That was in October of 2016. But even before that, Robbie Mook alleged that Russia was behind the DNC hack. He made that comment on TV in July of 2016. Also, we learn from the London case that Steele first met with Confusion GPS at London Heathrow Airport in May of 2016. Steele first met with Confusion GPS in May of 2016 at Heathrow International Airport, and we can assume that was Glenn Simpson. Think about that. May 2016. Go to my timeline and look at the month of May of 2016, at all the things that were happening in May of 2016. Now plug into that Steele was meeting with Confusion GPS. I'll be adding that to my timeline for the month of May 2016. Also, we learned that by July 5th of 2016, the Rotten Reverend Clinton had been made aware that Steele was working for the campaign to dirty up Trump with the dossier. Now, that is the latest possible date that the Rotten Reverend Clinton knew. July 5th of 2016. That's the latest possible date. My guess is that she knew probably back in May or earlier. Up to her eyeballs in this, because she's the mastermind who planned, organized, directed, and controlled it all. When all the evidence is in, it's going to point right to the Rotten Reverend Clinton. Remember, I've got documented evidence on a YouTube video proving that 2 years ago, I made that call. When no one, and still to this day, no one places Hillary as the mastermind. Everyone looks at Brennan, Obama, Clapper, Comey, and all these people. Strzok, Page, no. The Rotten Reverend was the mastermind. And I called it 2 years ago. That's what we're going to learn. And as more and more evidence comes out, it looks like I'm going to be proven correct. Gut instinct. And knowing the history of the Rotten Reverend and how she works. It smelled like a Rotten Reverend plot from the very beginning. I imagine the demonic buzzard is sweating some bullets right now. But you know what? She's going to walk. She's going to walk. Because she always has other people do her dirty work. And she'll just lie. If they even put her in front of a grand jury, which they probably, or put her in front of a jury, which they won't. I'd be surprised if they even interview her. So, the FBI would have known every bit of this information before they learned about the Papagalopoulos conversation with Alexander Down the Hatch Downer in the bar at the Kensington Wine Room in London in 2016. Do you realize how devastating this is? The FBI has sworn up until now that they were not involved in doing anything until after they started Crossfire Hurricane, July 31st of 2016. They've also stated emphatically that it was Papadopoulos, hearing about the tip they got about Papadopoulos meeting with Downer at the Kensington Wine Room in London was the reason that they opened this investigation. But we now know that they knew long before that, what the entire plot was. They knew about the dossier. They knew who paid for it. The whole 9 yards. The whole Papadopoulos thing was a setup to cover their ass. Because they didn't have a reason why they launched and opened an investigation. So they had to create one after the fact. Because they were caught. Because Trump won the election. So then they had to go, uh-oh, we better come up with some sort of a plan to have some sort of an excuse why we actually opened an illegal investigation. We better get something on somebody. So they ran the frame up on Pops. Who do you think Halper was working for? The FBI says he wasn't working for them until after Crossfire Hurricane. So who was he working for back in May? Who was Downer working for? I think we're going to find out that these people were contacted or contracted, however you want to look at it, by the Rotten Reverend, not directly, because she doesn't do anything directly. She used some intermediary to bring Halper, likely, and Downer into the game, along with Mifsud. Mifsud, Downer, and Halper, all in the game, long before July 31st, 2016. Somebody's in a world of shit. Somebody. Either a whole bunch of people at the FBI are all lying about when Halper and Downer and Mifsud were involved and who they were working for and who was coordinating all that. Either they're lying about that or they're telling the truth. And I don't think they're telling the truth. I think they knew about it. But I'm really getting the feeling that Halper, Mifsud, and Downer were brought into the game by someone else. And someone associated with the Clinton campaign. Christopher Steele also reiterated in these court hearings what he said in the previous court deposition with BuzzFeed, where he said that he was hired to gather evidence that could be used by the Clinton campaign to challenge the election in court. Hillary knew when she was on that debate stage with Trump in October, when she accused him of being a puppet of Putin. She knew that it was all complete garbage, and he was not any type of a, asset of Putin or coordinating with Putin. In fact, at the very time she was saying that, she knew long ago, 5 months earlier, that she had this former British ex-spy working to put together a fake Russia story that she was throwing out in the debate. That's how horribly corrupt and dishonest that woman is. The Rotten Reverend, the demonic buzzard. Boy, oh boy. That woman has at some point got to be held accountable for her crimes. She's a slick devil, though. I will say that. One slick devil. Not only that, what amazed the court in London, there was a point in the court case in London, and it's actually in the judge's ruling, where they chastised Christopher Steele and the FBI. Again, this Durham's going to get this transcript, and he's going to read right there where the judge said, hey, you know what? First of all, Mr. Steele, you had an obligation to verify this information, and you made no effort to do it. Most of what you put in here you got from a Google search. Not only that, the judge informed Steele and the court that his investigators, the court investigators who took Steele's dossier to try to verify it themselves, they were able to knock down damn near everything in his dossier in 2 days. 2 days. The court's investigators, the court's lawyers in London, disproved the dossier in 2 days. And he points out in the court, in the statement and in the hearings, how, bad that looks for the American FBI. That the court's own guys were able to debunk the dossier in 2 days. Yet the FBI was never able to debunk it until, what? We're told March, or February and March of 2017. They could have had that dossier debunked 2 days after Steele gave it to him. Probably faster than that, though, the FBI. The London court, I guess they're lawyers that work for the court system in London, they disproved the dossier in 2 days. And he told Steele that in the court, and it's in the transcripts. Wait till Durham gets a hold of that and reads that. Holy shit. They debunked it, yeah. They debunked it in 2 days. And you got all those people in the Obama administration that went out on TV and spread this bullshit, and they knew it was bullshit. They knew it was bullshit back in the summer of 2016. Yet they went out on TV, Susan Rice and the whole group, Newland, the whole bunch of them, Robbie Mook, Clinton herself, brought up in the debates. Knew it was all bullshit. That they created. That Hillary paid for. So Hillary's got her lawyer. So let's go through this. Hillary, so in the spring of 2016, the DNC is allegedly hacked. Now we know that the DNC wasn't hacked. It was an inside job by, most likely, Seth Rich. But they have to find some way to cover for it because it's embarrassing. So they blame it on the Russians. And then they take it one step farther and create this phony Trump-Russia hoax and try to tie Trump to the so-called hack working with the Russians and WikiLeaks, which they know is total bullshit. And the FBI goes along with it, knowing it's all bullshit. Then they bring in Confusion GPS and bring in Christopher Steele, and they do all the leaking and they do all the making of all this shit up. Then the Rotten Reverend is using her former stomping grounds, the State Department, to funnel the garbage through the State Department pipeline right into the FBI and the intelligence community. She's got her own lawyer, Michael Sussman from Confusion GPS, admitting in his testimony that he met with FBI General Counsel James Baker on 2 occasions, and on one of them occasions presented him with a thumb drive and some documents that were supposed to prove that Trump's server at Trump Tower was communicating with Alpha Bank, which has now just been blown completely up by the court in London. Not only that, Sussman also admitted that he met multiple times throughout the summer of 2016, up to about the time of the election, with people in the intelligence community about Trump-Russia collusion. So here's Hillary's lawyer directly communicating with FBI General Counsel, with the intelligence community. She's got her boys, Blumenthal and Shearer, coming up with their own little dossier, which they're feeding to Steele through various people back into the FBI. Clearly, the Right Reverend Clinton was like the puppet master, like the marionette, sitting there planning, directing, organizing, carrying out this entire plot. She's pushing all the buttons. She knows how to make this thing work. She knows the territory. She knows how things work. There you go. The Right Reverend Clinton, as I've been saying for 2 years, was the mastermind of the plot. Planned, organized, directed, and controlled the whole thing. The evidence is going to prove me correct. And we'll keep watching. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for tuning in. I'll be back shortly.